that exchange of gases takes place through simple diffusion according to concentration gradient from higher to lower concentration. It means whatever gaseous exchange takes place either at any of the place, means gaseous exchange means diffusion of oxygen or diffusion of carbon dioxide. Here, when we are talking about the gaseous exchange in case of respiration, it means we are talking about the transportation or exchange of oxygen or carbon dioxide only. Okay, so in respiration we know the transport of oxygen is taking place and transport of carbon dioxide is taking place, and at different sites the gaseous exchange takes place. Okay, we have already seen in the previous class that two sites are there where actually gaseous exchange takes place. One site is there in which the oxygen and carbon dioxide is being exchanged from the alveoli to blood vessel, and the second site was the where the blood vessel was there and tissue or cell was there, and in between both of these kinds of systems the exchange of gases was taking place. So here whatever gaseous exchange takes place in case of respiration, the transportation across the tissue, across the cell, is taking place by a simple diffusion. You know that if any of the material, if any of the gas, if any of the molecule has to be transported inside the cell or outside of the cell, then it may transport by active transport or by passive transport, and different kinds of passive transports are there. Okay, so simple diffusion is the process through which the oxygen or carbon dioxide is being transported from one region to another. Okay, so this is the only method or procedure or mechanism through which the oxygen and carbon dioxide is being exchanged from one side to another. Okay, so here exchange of gases here we are talking about oxygen and carbon dioxide through simple diffusion only. You will have to remember it, and you know that simple diffusion comes under passive transport, means here no ATP will be consumed for the transportation of all these molecules. Okay, so wherever exchange of gases takes place in case of respiration takes place only by simple diffusion according to concentration gradient. You know the meaning of concentration gradient in previous classes. You've already studied how diffusion takes place on one side of the plasma membrane or one side of the membrane. If the concentration is high and another side the concentration is low, then the molecule moves from their higher concentration to lower. The flow of molecule only occurs from their higher concentration to lower. This is called as concentration gradient. So here in case of gaseous exchange in respiration, the molecules will be transported from their higher concentration to lower concentration. Means by only simple diffusion, the oxygen and carbon dioxide is being transported from one tissue to another, one region to another. Okay, so simple diffusion according to a concentration gradient. And what does it mean? Concentration gradient from higher to lower concentration. Okay, now I told you two sites are there, primary site and secondary site. So on primary site, there would be the alveoli and blood vessel. Here the gaseous, one of the gaseous exchange takes place, and the secondary site is the site where blood vessel and tissue or cells would be there. Okay, so there are two different sites. Okay, primary site and secondary site where actually gaseous exchange takes place, and this gaseous exchange takes place either on primary site or secondary site is being only done by simple diffusion only. Okay, now one important point has been written: the rate of diffusion depends on solubility of gases and thickness of the respiratory surface. The two main things are there which will regulate the transportation of material or the diffusion process. Okay, the one thing is its solubility, means if the molecule is more soluble, then its transportation will be more. If it would be less soluble, then its transportation will be less. And it depends on one more thing: thickness. If I told you there would be a membrane, if the membrane is thinner, then the rate of transportation will be more. And if the membrane is thick, then the transportation rate will become less. So the rate of diffusion depends on two things. First, the nature of the molecule, how much soluble it is in a particular solution or liquid. And the second thing, the thickness of the membrane. Uh, the thickness of membrane means the membrane which divides two different regions. Okay, so here two things are main important are playing an important role on rate of diffusion. Okay, and we will discuss the same thing in later of this chapter also. So here two things have been written at different places, PO2 and PCO2. Okay, so capital P, O2 means partial pressure of oxygen and PCO2 means partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So wherever it would be written PO2, it means we are talking about partial pressure of oxygen, and whenever we are talking about PCO2, it means we are talking about partial pressure of carbon dioxide. And what is the meaning of partial pressure? Partial pressure means if we are inhaling air, then along with the air, various types of gases are there. The maximum or major amount of the gas in case of environmental air is the nitrogen. So different gases are there. Among all these gases, we are talking about the pressure or the pressure of this oxygen. Partial pressure of oxygen is determined by the number of molecules of oxygen. So the number of oxygen of molecule determines its pressure. Means here when we are talking about the partial pressure of oxygen, it means there would be certain pressure which would be created by oxygen only. And when we are talking about partial pressure of carbon dioxide, it means among all the gases of the air, there would be some pressure which would be created by carbon dioxide alone. So the partial pressure of oxygen and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is denoted by PO2 and PCO2 respectively. Okay, so we have seen this figure previously also. Now we will discuss some more things on this side, how this gaseous exchange takes place, how this oxygen from alveoli moves in the blood vessel, and how this the same oxygen from this blood vessel is transported in the tissue, how this carbon dioxide is transported from this tissue to this blood vessel, and how the same carbon dioxide is transported from the blood vessel to the alveoli. So it actually depends on, I told you, it depends on the partial pressure of oxygen and partial pressure of carbon dioxide, because I told you that the gaseous exchange in case of respiration takes place by diffusion process. And I told you what is the meaning of diffusion. Diffusion means movement of molecule from their higher concentration to lower. Okay, so you just see here, when we are inhaling air, then the air is having more amount of oxygen. Okay, so here in the air which we have inhaled in our alveoli is having more partial pressure. You just see 104 is the partial pressure of oxygen in this alveoli. Okay, and the partial pressure of oxygen in blood vessel is very much less, 40. Okay, so you just see partial pressure of oxygen is so much high. Okay, around 2.5 times high as compared to, you just see, the blood vessel. Okay, so I told you, in case of simple diffusion, what happens? The movement of molecule takes place from their higher concentration to lower. So what happens here? The amount of oxygen is more. Just because of that, the partial pressure is more. Here the amount of oxygen is less, that's why its partial pressure is less. So what happens here? The oxygen moves from their higher concentration to lower concentration. It means the oxygen moves from alveoli to the blood vessel. So by this process, you just see the oxygen which comes in the alveoli will be diffused in the blood vessel. This is the process through which the oxygen will come out in this, will come in this blood vessel from this alveoli. Okay, but when we are talking about the carbon dioxide, okay, so you just see the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in this blood vessel is 45 and partial pressure of carbon dioxide in this alveoli is 40. So here again there is a concentration difference, that's why the partial pressure is different. Okay, so here the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 45 and in case of alveoli the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 40. It means the molecule will move, means the carbon dioxide will move from their higher concentration to lower. So what will happen here? The carbon dioxide which is present in the blood vessel will move from the blood vessel to the alveoli. So by this, you just see carbon dioxide is coming from alveoli to the blood vessel, and carbon dioxide is moving from blood vessel to the alveoli. So by inhalation, we have taken air. In this air, oxygen would be there, and the amount of oxygen would be so much more, and as compared to blood vessel. So here oxygen will be diffused in this blood vessel. Okay, and here in the same blood vessel, what will happen? The amount of carbon dioxide is so much high because carbon dioxide comes from different tissues. Different tissues have utilized this oxygen and produced a lot of carbon dioxide. So here a lot of carbon dioxide is there due to enormous amount of carbon dioxide molecule. Here the partial pressure will be more as compared to the environmental air. And what will happen here? The amount of the carbon dioxide moves from their higher concentration to lower. It means carbon dioxide moves from the blood vessel to the alveoli. So you will have to remember here one thing, the partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, if you can remember it, then you can easily explain that how the gaseous exchange takes place by simple diffusion at primary site. So you will have to remember the partial pressure of oxygen is in alveoli is 104, and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 40, and in case of blood vessel, partial pressure of oxygen is 40 and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 45. If you can remember these digits, then you can explain it so much easily. Okay, so what happens? This blood vessel, you just see this one is the blood vessel. Okay, so here the blood vessel, in this blood vessel, whatever blood is coming here in this blood vessel will be deoxygenated blood, because this blood vessel is transporting blood from the tissues to the lungs. That's why here whatever blood is coming in this vessel is deoxygenated. But when this gaseous exchange takes place, so you just see that this deoxygenated blood will get a lot of oxygen and will remove a lot of carbon dioxide. So by accumulation of oxygen and removal of carbon dioxide, this deoxygenated blood becomes oxygenated blood. It means what happens? The blood vessel collects the carbon dioxide from our tissues and the cells, and it reaches to our lungs. Okay, and in the lungs, the deoxygenated blood becomes oxygenated. Okay, why we are saying deoxygenated blood? Because most of the oxygen has been utilized by our cell. So here the blood will lose a lot of oxygen in tissues. Okay, so here in case of tissues, the blood vessel will lose a lot of oxygen. That's why it will become deoxygenated, and when it reaches to the alveoli, then it will become oxygenated. Okay, so what happens? The blood vessel which comes in lungs will be deoxygenated blood, and when it leaves the lungs, then the blood vessel will have the blood with oxygen, and that blood will be called as oxygenated blood. Okay, now the second site, okay, that is also called a secondary site. Secondary site is, I told you, where the two things are there, blood vessel as well as tissue or cell. Okay, so here you just see again there is a much difference among the concentration of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So here you could see that the partial pressure of, here we are talking about the blood vessel which is present in the tissues or organs or the cells. So these blood vessels are present uh, in the organ or tissues or nearby the cell. Okay, so here we just see that in this blood vessel the partial pressure of oxygen is 95, and here the partial pressure of oxygen is 40. Okay, so again there is a much difference among the concentration of the oxygen. Okay, so here 95 is there and here 40 is there. And when we talk about the concentration of carbon dioxide, then you can see that the concentration of the amount of carbon dioxide is more in tissue and less in blood vessel. Why this cell is having less oxygen and more carbon dioxide? Because due to cellular respiration, this cell has utilized all the oxygen for the oxidation of food. Okay, so for the oxidation of food, whatever oxygen it has taken from the blood vessel, it has utilized those. That's why all the time in tissues or the cells, amount of oxygen will become less because it will consistently utilize the oxygen. Okay, and this blood vessel is having the blood with the oxygen. You just see here the blood vessel is transporting oxygenated blood. It means here you just see oxygenated blood is entering in this blood vessel. It means here the whatever blood has become oxygenated is now being transported here. Okay, so here the blood in this capillary, in this blood capillary, the blood is oxygenated blood. Okay, that's why the oxygen concentration is so much high, and here in this tissue the oxygen concentration is low. So as you know, in the diffusion process, the molecule moves from their higher concentration to lower. So by this phenomena, the oxygen will move from their higher concentration to lower. It means by the process of diffusion, this oxygen which was present in this blood vessel moves in this tissue or the cell. And here, in case of when we talk about the carbon dioxide, as compared to this blood vessel, the amount of carbon dioxide is so much more because this cell is consistently producing carbon dioxide. We have already seen that how the oxygen will be utilized to oxidize the food, and a lot of carbon dioxide will be produced. So when we are seeing the amount of carbon dioxide in a cell or tissue, then obviously the amount of carbon dioxide will be much more high as compared to the blood vessel. So here the carbon dioxide concentration is high as compared to blood vessel. So what will happen? The carbon dioxide which is present in enormous amount will move from the tissue to the this one blood vessel. Okay, so here what will happen? The oxygenated blood which comes from the lungs enters in this blood vessel, and here exchange takes place. Since this tissue has taken up oxygen and given carbon dioxide, that's why this blood vessel uh, will drawn the blood with deoxygenated hemoglobin. You just see here deoxygenated blood is moving out. Why this? How this oxygenated blood becomes deoxygenated? Because whatever oxygen it has taken up from this side, first side, is now releasing those. That's why this oxygenated blood becomes deoxygenated. Again, this deoxygenated blood will move in this blood vessel and will again move to primary side. And from this primary side, what will happen? The hemoglobin will be charged with oxygen, and here again the deoxygenated becomes oxygenated blood, and this oxygenated blood again moves through different sites of our body, different tissues of our body, different cells or tissues of our different organs, and again the oxygen will be delivered and carbon dioxide will be taken up, and again the blood will become deoxygenated. So here oxygenation and deoxygenation of the blood takes place. It means ultimately we can say that at primary site blood will become oxygenated, and on secondary side the blood becomes deoxygenated. So all the time blood will become oxygenated, then deoxygenated, oxygenated and deoxygenated. Oxygenation of the blood takes place at primary site, and deoxygenation of the blood takes place at secondary site. So you will have to remember the partial pressure here again, then only you can explain that how this gaseous exchange takes place at secondary site. Okay, now some facts has been written here, as you could see. Solubility of carbon dioxide is 22 to 25 times higher than oxygen. So I told you that rate of diffusion depends on two things. I told you two things were there. One, the solubility, and the second, the thickness of the membrane through which the gases are passing through. Okay, so here solubility of carbon dioxide is more as compared to oxygen. है ना? It means the diffusion process of this carbon dioxide is much more as compared to oxygen. You will have to remember. And how much it is higher as compared to oxygen? 22 to 25 times higher. Okay, since the solubility of carbon dioxide is so much higher as compared to oxygen, it means carbon dioxide rate of diffusion of carbon dioxide will be much more as compared to oxygen. Means the diffusion of carbon dioxide will be more as compared to oxygen. First thing. Therefore, the rate of diffusion of carbon dioxide is higher. I told you. So its partial pressure is much higher than oxygen. Okay, due to its more and more diffusion, due to its more solubility, more diffusion takes place, and due to more diffusion, the partial pressure becomes so much more as compared to oxygen. Okay, one thing. And the second factor I told, the membrane to which it is going through, means there would be some membrane, there would be some vessels membrane, there would be some tissues which is present in the alveoli. So all these tissues it has to cross. So what are those membranes? I told you that the rate of diffusion will be regulated by one more thing, that is the thickness of the membrane. And this membrane includes three things. You just see three layers are there. Okay, three things or three layers are there. First layer, membrane of the alveoli, and this membrane of alveoli is made up of squamous epithelial cells. The second, membrane of alveolar capillary or blood capillary. Okay, alveolar capillary means blood capillary which is present in alveoli. Okay, and it is made up of a particular tissue that is called as endothelial tissue. Okay, and in between both of these membranes, in between both of these tissues, some basement membrane is present. Okay, so in between the tissue of alveoli and the tissue which makes the blood capillary, in between those there will be some space, and that space is filled with substance. That substance is called basement membrane or basement substance. So this either for carbon dioxide or oxygen, the membrane would be the same, and it has to cross all these three layers. So I'll show you the membrane so that you can understand it easily. Okay, you just see here. So this one is the alveoli, okay, and this one is the blood vessel. Okay, so when air enters in this bag-like structure, I told you there will be some space in this bag-like structure that is called as alveoli. So this alveoli is having a particular tissue, and here we will use the term alveolar wall. So there is one membrane, alveolar wall, and another membrane. You just see this membrane, endothelial, which is made up of endothelium, is making the blood vessel. You just see this one is the blood vessel. So here one membrane is making this alveolar wall, and another membrane is making this blood vessel. So two membranes are there, and in between you just see a substance is filled. This substance is called basement substance. So what will happen? You just see, you know that oxygen is transporting from here to here. So this oxygen has to cross the wall of this alveoli, has to cross. After that, it will cross the basement membrane. After that, it will cross the wall of blood capillary. After that, it will reach in this lumen. Okay, and for carbon dioxide, what will happen? Carbon dioxide first cross the wall of this blood vessel, then it will reach in the basement membrane or basement substance. After that, it has to cross this alveolar wall. After that, carbon dioxide will reach here. So three layers are there to cross this gas, to cross this oxygen or carbon dioxide. So here the same thing you could see here, although I haven't made the tissue, but you could understand. So here, this oxygen is crossing this wall. You just see this wall is crossing, and again this another layer is here, and in between this capillary and blood vessel, there is a basement substance. So when oxygen will reach here, then it has to cross one membrane, first membrane, second layer, and third membrane, means second membrane or third layer. Okay, and when we are talking about the carbon dioxide, then it has to cross this blood vessels membrane, then basement substance, and then alveolar wall. So this one is the membrane, and through this membrane diffusion takes place. Now, diffuser membrane, we have already talked about. Now, transportation of gases. Okay, so now we will come on the topic in which we will see that as we know that blood is transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide, and blood is having certain components. You know that blood is made up of mainly two things. One is the fluid substance that is called as plasma, and the second blood cells. Two things are there which will make the whole blood. So among both of these, which will transport what in which percentage, we need to remember it. We need to know this because in examinations, these are the favorite topics they used to ask, that they will ask that the oxygen is transported by which component of the blood in which percentage. So they will write the combination of the percentage as well as the component of the blood. So two things are there, the component of the blood, and the second is the percentage of the molecule it is being transporting. Okay, so here transport, when we are talking about the transportation of oxygen, okay, how which component of the blood is transporting oxygen, in which ratio, in which percentage, then we could see here that it has been clearly written that 97% of the oxygen is transported by RBC. Okay, and here we know when we study the structure of RBC, then we know that RBC, RBC is a particular cell which is called as, means the full form of RBC is red blood corpuscle. Okay, or red blood cells, corpuscle and cell is the same. And when we see the structure of this RBC in case of mammals, then we could say that the when we are talking about the mammals except camel, then RBCs of the mammals is devoid of nucleus. Means the mature RBC, mature red blood cell, is not having the nucleus. First thing. When we talk about the structure of RBC, then it will be so much small as compared to rest of the cells, means WBCs and platelets, they are so much small. Okay, so that they can transport easily from one region to another. You know that RBC, you just see 97% of the oxygen is only transported by RBC. So it has to travel a lot as compared to rest of the cells. That's why their size is so much small, so that they can easily move within the blood vessel. If the blood vessel is thinner, then also they can move from here and there. Okay, so their size is small. And when we talk about its shape, then it is biconcave in structure as to increase its surface area. Okay, and this RBC is having a particular component that is called as hemoglobin. Okay, we will later talk about the structure and the shape and function of this RBC in another chapter. But for now, I'll give you a glimpse of RBC. So this RBC is having a particular component that is called as hemoglobin. Okay, and by the name, we can understand that what would be the component of this hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, if we will see its name, hemo means heme and globin means globulin protein. It means hemoglobin is made up of mainly two components, heme and globulin protein. Okay, heme means iron and globulin protein is a kind of particular protein. So hemoglobin is made up of two components, iron, which is known as heme, and globulin protein. So this heme or iron is the main part, main component which binds oxygen. Okay, so RBC transports oxygen by which mechanism? Because of the presence of this hemoglobin. Hemoglobin binds oxygen wherever hemoglobin means, I told you the main component of the hemoglobin is two things. The one is iron and another is protein, globulin protein. And among both of these, hemoglobin is the main component, means iron is the main component. So iron of our hemoglobin of RBC binds oxygen, and if it will bind it, then it will transport the oxygen from one region to another. So around 97% of the oxygen is being transported by RBC. One thing you will have to remember, that major amount of the oxygen is transported by RBC. Okay. Now, rest means around 3% of the oxygen is transported by plasma. What is plasma? Plasma is the fluid part of the blood. So 3% of the oxygen is being transported by plasma in dissolved form. Okay, I told you the solubility of carbon dioxide is so much more. That's why it will dissolve easily in the solution. as as compared to oxygen, the solubility of carbon dioxide is 22 to 25% more. It means the solubility of oxygen is so much less as compared to carbon dioxide. So very less amount of oxygen will be dissolved in the plasma. Okay, so the transportation of oxygen is taking place by two ways, majority by RBCs, and actually in RBC, hemoglobin is there that binds oxygen and transports it. And the less amount of oxygen, very much less or negligible amount of oxygen is transported by the plasma, and it is around 2 to 3%. Okay, and it is transporting the oxygen in dissolved form. First thing. When we talk about the carbon dioxide, then it is a very complex data. There is a very much complex data. Please mute yourself, please. So when we talk about the transportation of carbon dioxide, then we just see there is a complex percentage. And here, first you just see RBC is transporting around 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide. Okay, so hemoglobin not only binds oxygen, it also binds carbon dioxide as well as carbon monoxide also. If and you need to know this thing, that if the RBC is getting carbon monoxide, CO, and two things are, if two things are present in the air, carbon monoxide and air, means oxygen, then RBC principally binds carbon monoxide as compared to oxygen. So iron of the hemoglobin reacts more with carbon monoxide as compared to oxygen. So this hemoglobin not only binds with oxygen only, it binds carbon dioxide also. So here you just see the carbon dioxide, the hemoglobin of our RBC also binds this carbon dioxide too, and the percentage it contributes around 20 to 25%. And here it binds carbon dioxide, and here HB, CO2, HB means hemoglobin and CO2 is the binded form. Okay, so it will be called as carboxyhemoglobin. And here 70% of the carbon dioxide, 70% of the carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonate ion. Okay, we will see how the bicarbonate will be formed. So what will happen here, carbon dioxide will react with water and it will form finally the bicarbonate. And here this in the form of bicarbonate ion, it will be transported by RBC and plasma. But here here it will be transported in the form of bicarbonate. But previously, this percentage 20 to 25% is of the carbon dioxide is transported in binded form. Means here the carbon dioxide is the same, its nature has not been changed. But here when it will be converted into bicarbonate, then within the plasma and the fluid part of the RBC, this carbon dioxide will react with water and it will form the bicarbonate. Okay, and the 7% of the carbon dioxide is transported in the form of in dissolved form. I told you the dissolution or the solubility of carbon dioxide will be much more high as compared to oxygen. So that's why 7% of the carbon dioxide is being transported in the form of dissolved solution. Okay, so it will be dissolved, it will directly dissolve in the fluid part of the blood, or we can say the plasma. And here it is transported in the when it will bind 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is transported by RBC only. And here hemoglobin, the same hemoglobin which binds here with the oxygen, the same hemoglobin binds carbon dioxide and transports 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide. But 70%, the major part of the carbon dioxide is transported in bicarbonate form. So you will have to remember that 20 to 25% of the RBC, 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide is transported by RBC alone in binded form. Means here hemoglobin binds with carbon dioxide. Okay, and it will be called as carboxyhemoglobin. Now 70% of the carbon dioxide now will become bicarbonate ion. Okay, carbon dioxide will be converted into bicarbonate, means its chemical nature will be changed, it will react and it will finally form the bicarbonate HCO3 minus. And this in this form, bicarbonate form, it will be transported by RBC and plasma both. You will have to remember this bicarbonate form of this carbon dioxide is not only transported by plasma alone, RBC also transports it. But we don't know, means we don't know how much percentage of this bicarbonate is transported by which component, because in different places its percentage will be changed, so it is not certain. Okay, so I'll let you know how the bicarbonate ion will be formed, how the transportation of carbon dioxide is taking place by this way, bicarbonate form, because major amount of carbon dioxide is being transported by this RBC and plasma in this form, bicarbonate ion. Okay, and here 7% directly carbon dioxide in the same form will dissolve in the plasma and it will be transported. Okay, so you will have to remember their percentage. Okay, you just see 20 to 25%, 70% and 7%, and so much easy data is there with this oxygen 97% by the RBC, and here only in the binded form. Here oxygen is not being converted in anything else, and 3% of the oxygen is being transported by dissolved form in the dissolved form by the plasma. And here you will have to remember this bicarbonate, because this one is so much important topic. We will discuss here that how this bicarbonate will be formed, how the carbon dioxide is being transported in this bicarbonate